Welcome to Sun Moon Saga. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. After years stuck in a miserable cubicle job, I finally stood at the edge of a cliff, clutching the leather-bound journal I promised to fill with adventures. My heart raced, my breath misting in the cold air. This was the moment I had dreamed of, but now fear gripped me. Was this the escape from my predictable life I had been longing for? As I stood there, lost in thought, I heard a voice behind me. Samantha. I spun around to see David, my high school sweetheart, the one who had broken my heart all those years ago. He looked just as shocked to see me as I was to see him. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I couldn't believe it. What were the chances of running into him here, of all places? My heart raced for a different reason now, a mix of anger, sadness, and a flicker of something I didn't want to admit: hope. We stood there, the cold wind whipping around us, both unsure of what to say next. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've been coming here for years," he said softly, "ever since I left town. It's my escape." I nodded, the irony hitting me hard. Both of us had been running from our past, seeking solace in the same place. He took a step closer, and I could see the regret in his eyes. "I never stopped thinking about you, Samantha. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry." Before I could respond, another voice cut through the air. "David, what's taking so long?" A woman appeared, beautiful and confident, holding a baby in her arms. My stomach dropped. David's eyes widened, and he quickly introduced her. "Samantha, this is Emily, my wife, and our son, Liam." My heart sank. Of course he had moved on. Why wouldn't he? But seeing them together brought a fresh wave of pain I wasn't prepared for. I forced a smile and congratulated them, though it felt like daggers in my chest. Emily smiled back, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Just as I thought I couldn't take any more, she handed the baby to David and said, "I'll give you two a moment." "Nice to meet you, Samantha." As she walked away, David looked at me helplessly. "I didn't plan this," he said, "running into you like this. It's like the universe is playing a cruel joke." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "David, it's fine. We both have our lives now." But deep down, I knew it wasn't fine. I had spent years trying to move on, to find something or someone to fill the void he had left. And now, seeing him with his perfect family, I felt more lost than ever. We stood there in silence, the weight of our past hanging heavy between us. Finally, I forced myself to turn away, gripping my journal tightly. It was time to face my fears and find my own path, no matter how painful it might be. Just as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Claire, my best friend. "Where are you?" "Big news." I sighed, relieved for the distraction. I quickly texted back, "On a hike." "What's up?" Almost immediately, my phone rang. Claire's voice was breathless with excitement. "Sam, you won't believe this. Mark proposed. I'm engaged." I felt a mix of joy and jealousy. Claire and Mark had been dating for a few years, and while I was genuinely happy for her, it was another reminder of everything I felt I was missing. "Oh my God, Claire, that's amazing. Congratulations." I tried to sound enthusiastic. We chatted for a bit, and her happiness was infectious. For a moment, I forgot about David and the emotional whirlwind I was in. But as soon as I hung up, reality came crashing back. Suddenly, Emily reappeared, alone this time. She approached me cautiously. "Samantha, can we talk?" I nodded, unsure of what to expect. "I know about you and David," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "He told me everything when we got serious. I've always been curious about the woman he couldn't forget." Her honesty caught me off guard. She cut me off, holding up her hand. "Let me finish. I'm not here to accuse you of anything. In fact, I need your help. David's been different lately, distant. I thought coming here would bring him back to me, but seeing you, I realize maybe he needs closure." Her eyes pleaded with me. "Please, talk to him. Help him, for all of us." My heart ached at her vulnerability. Despite my own feelings, I couldn't deny the truth in her words. Against my better judgment, I agreed. As I walked back to where David stood, holding Liam, a storm of emotions raged inside me. "David," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He looked at me, surprised, then handed the baby to Emily. We walked a short distance away, finding a secluded spot. "What's going on with you?" I asked, not sure where to begin. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. Samantha, I thought I had moved on, but seeing you again, it stirred up everything I buried. I love Emily and my son, but there's a part of me that's unresolved. His words hit me hard. David, you have a family now. You need to focus on them. We both need to move on. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I know, but it's so hard. We stood there, both broken and healing, trying to find a way to let go. Finally, I hugged him, a bittersweet farewell to the past. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of peace. It was time to write my own story, one page at a time. As I made my way down the trail, feeling a mix of sadness and relief, my phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered hesitantly. The voice on the other end made my heart skip a beat. Samantha, it's Dad. We need to talk. I hadn't heard from my father in years. He had walked out on us when I was a teenager, leaving a trail of broken promises and unanswered questions. My pulse quickened. Dad, what's going on? His voice was urgent. I know it's been a long time, but I'm in trouble. I need your help. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. Memories of abandonment clashed with my instinct to help. I needed answers. Where are you? I asked. I'm in the city hospital, he replied. Please, Samantha. I don't have anyone else. My mind raced as I agreed to meet him, curiosity and unresolved emotions swirling inside me. Arriving at the hospital, I saw a frail man in a bed that barely resembled the strong figure I remembered. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Samantha, thank you for coming, he said weakly. I'm sick, and I need to make things right before it's too late. My anger softened as I saw the genuine regret in his eyes. Why did you leave us? I blurted out, unable to contain the question that had haunted me for years. He took a deep breath, his eyes filling with tears. I made a lot of mistakes. I thought I was doing what was best for you and your mother, but I was wrong. I was selfish and scared. His confession hit me hard. I had spent years hating him, but now, seeing his vulnerability, I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. I'm dying, Samantha, he continued. I need to ask for your forgiveness, and I need to tell you something important. Before I could respond, the door burst open, and a woman I didn't recognize stormed in. You, she shouted, pointing at my father. You ruined my life. My head spun as the room erupted into chaos. The woman turned to me, her eyes blazing. You have no idea what he's done. My father looked defeated, tears streaming down his face. Samantha, this is Helen. She's your half-sister. My world tilted on its axis. What? I gasped, feeling the ground slip from under me. My father had a whole other family, and this revelation was just the beginning of a new chapter, filled with more questions than answers. Helen's eyes were filled with anger and pain as she continued to shout. He abandoned us too, Samantha. He left me and my mom when I was just a baby, and we never heard from him again. The room seemed to close in on me as I tried to process her words. Another family, another abandonment. How many lives had my father destroyed with his selfishness? I turned to my father, my voice shaking. Is this true? Did you leave her too? He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I was a coward. I thought I was protecting you all from my mistakes, but I only caused more pain. Helen's anger was palpable, but beneath it, I could see the same hurt and confusion I felt. We were both victims of his failures. Before I could say anything else, Helen collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I've spent my whole life hating you, she cried, looking at our father. And now you want forgiveness? After all these years? Her words echoed my own thoughts, and I felt a strange connection to this woman I had just met. We were both searching for closure, for some semblance of peace. Taking a deep breath, I walked over to Helen and put a hand on her shoulder. I understand how you feel, I said softly, but maybe we can find a way to heal together. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty, but also a glimmer of hope. Our father watched us, his expression a mix of guilt and gratitude. In that moment, I realized that forgiving him was not just about him. It was about freeing ourselves from the pain he had caused. Dad, I said, turning to him, I don't know if we can ever fully forgive you, but we're willing to try. For our sake, not yours. Helen nodded, wiping her tears. Our father reached out a trembling hand, and we each took it, a tentative step towards healing the wounds of the past. A few months passed, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Helen and I had formed a fragile bond, slowly building a relationship out of the ruins our father had left. I focused on my small business, finding joy in creating handmade crafts that I sold online. My best friend, Claire, visited often, bringing laughter and warmth into my home. It felt like a fresh start, but the past was never far behind. One evening, as I was wrapping up an order, my phone rang. It was David. We hadn't spoken since that fateful day on the cliff. "Samantha, can we meet? I need to talk to you." His voice was filled with urgency. Curiosity and apprehension gnawed at me, but I agreed. We met at a quiet coffee shop, and as soon as I saw him, I knew something had changed. His face was drawn, and his eyes were filled with a mix of determination and sorrow. "Samantha, I've left Emily," he said bluntly. My heart skipped a beat. I realized that I can't keep living a lie. "I'm still in love with you." His words hit me like a tidal wave. Part of me had always wondered what could have been, but hearing it now, with so much at stake, was overwhelming. "David, you have a family. What about Liam?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Emily and I talked. She knows that our marriage has been falling apart for a long time. We're going to co-parent Liam, but I can't stay in a loveless marriage. I want to be with you, Samantha." The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable, but so were my doubts. "David, I don't want to be the reason your family breaks apart," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "You're not the reason, Samantha. The problems were there long before you came back into my life. Please, give us a chance." After countless sleepless nights and endless conversations with Claire, I finally decided to take a leap of faith. David and I started dating, slowly at first, navigating the complicated emotions and logistics of his separation. It was difficult, and my doubts never fully disappeared, but his commitment never wavered. We eventually moved in together, creating a new life and blending our worlds as best as we could. David supported my business, encouraging me to turn our spare room into a studio. It became my sanctuary, a place where I poured my creativity and dreams. Claire visited often, her engagement bringing a new layer of joy and excitement into our lives. One afternoon, as Claire and I sat in the garden, she looked at me, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "So, how's it going with David? Are you happy?" I smiled, thinking of all the ups and downs. "It's complicated, but yes, I am happy. We're building something real, and that's all I've ever wanted." One afternoon, as I was cleaning up the house, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. Claire's panties under our bed. My mind raced. There was no innocent explanation for this. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a wave of nausea. Claire, my best friend, had been coming over so often, and I had trusted her completely. Could she really be betraying me like this with David? I couldn't confront them directly. Not yet. I needed to know for sure. I decided to test them, to catch them in the act. The next time I planned to go grocery shopping, I told David and Claire I would be out for a few hours. But instead of going to the store, I parked my car a few blocks away and walked back to the house, silently slipping in through the back door. My heart was racing as I crept upstairs, careful not to make any noise. As I approached the bedroom, I could hear muffled voices and laughter. My worst fears were confirmed when I peeked through the crack in the door. David and Claire were together, completely unaware of my presence. My stomach churned with a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. I took out my phone, recording a short video to capture the evidence. It felt surreal, like I was watching a scene from a movie. Once I had enough proof, I quietly backed away and left the house, my mind spinning with what to do next. I drove around aimlessly, trying to process the betrayal by the two people I had trusted most in the world. That evening, I returned home with a calm facade, though my emotions were a storm inside. David greeted me as if nothing was wrong, and Claire texted me later, acting as if everything was normal. It was sickening. I knew I couldn't keep this charade up for long, so I devised a plan. The next day, I invited both David and Claire over, pretending I wanted to celebrate some good news about my business. They arrived, oblivious to what was coming. I had set up my laptop in the living room, and once they were both seated, I calmly played the video. The color drained from their faces as they watched themselves. "How could you?" I finally said, my voice trembling. "Both of you, how could you do this to me?" David stammered, "Samantha, I can explain." But I cut him off. "No explanations. I trusted you both, and you betrayed me." Claire started to cry, but I felt no sympathy. "I thought you were my friend, Claire. Clearly, I was wrong." I stood up, pointing to the door. "Get out, both of you. David and Claire hesitated, but I repeated, "Get out." They left, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The house was eerily quiet, but it was mine again. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. I had lost my partner and my best friend in one fell swoop, but I knew I was strong enough to rebuild my life from the ground up. I poured my heart into my business, finding solace in my work and the support of new friends. Bit by bit, I was creating a new chapter, one where betrayal had no place, and I was in control of my own story. As the months passed, my small business flourished. Orders poured in, and my handmade crafts were becoming popular. However, strange things started happening. Packages went missing, online reviews were tampered with, and my website faced repeated hacking attempts. It was clear that someone was deliberately trying to sabotage my success. I was determined to find out who it was. One evening, after yet another frustrating incident, I received an anonymous tip. The message suggested that Emily, David's wife, was behind the trouble. My heart sank at the thought. Why would she target me now, after everything that had happened? Fueled by a mix of curiosity and anger, I decided to confront her. I arranged to meet Emily at a neutral location, a small coffee shop away from prying eyes. When she arrived, her expression was a mixture of defiance and sorrow. "Emily, I know you've been sabotaging my business," I began, my voice steady. "Why?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "You stole my husband, Samantha. You ruined my family. I wanted you to feel some of the pain you caused me." Her words stung, but I remained composed. "Emily, you deserve to know the truth. David and it was never what you think. He told me you were separated, that he was committed to making a new life with me." Emily's expression shifted to confusion. "Separated? What are you talking about? We never broke up. He told me he had a long business trip planned, and that's why he was gone for so long. He never mentioned anything about you." My heart sank. David had lied to both of us. "Emily, David and I were together because he made me believe you two were over." I didn't know he was lying to me too. Her eyes widened in realization. "I found out about you through a mutual friend who saw you two together. That's when I started digging and learned where he had really been." We sat in silence, processing the betrayal we both had suffered. "So, where is David now?" I asked, breaking the silence. Emily shook her head. "I thought he was still on his business trip, but clearly, that's not the case." Just then, it hit me. "Claire," I said quietly. "He's been with Claire. She was in on this too." Emily's face turned pale. "All this time I thought he was traveling for work. I had no idea he was with your so-called best friend." We decided to confront them together. Armed with the painful truth, we drove to Claire's apartment. My heart pounded as I knocked on the door. When Claire opened it, her expression of surprise quickly turned to guilt. "What are you two doing here?" she asked nervously. "We know everything," I said coldly. "Where's David?" Her eyes flicked to the bedroom door. Emily and I pushed past her, and there he was, lounging on the bed as if he had not a care in the world. David's eyes widened in shock as he saw us. "Samantha, Emily, what are you doing here?" he stammered. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling with rage. "We know about your lies, David. All of them. How could you do this to us?" David looked cornered, his facade crumbling. I never meant for it to get this far," he muttered. I was confused, trying to figure out what I really wanted. "Confused?" I echoed, my voice filled with bitterness. "You destroyed both our lives. You played us against each other while you lived a double life. Well, your game is over." Emily turned to me, her eyes softening. "Samantha, I'm sorry for what I did to your business. I was hurt and angry, but we both deserve better than this." I nodded, feeling a sense of solidarity with her. "Let's leave him to his mess, Emily. We have our own lives to rebuild." As we walked away from Claire's apartment, I felt a strange sense of closure. The tangled web David had woven was unraveling, and while the pain would take time to heal, I knew I was strong enough to move forward. With my business back on track and new friendships to nurture, I looked ahead to a future free from the deceit and betrayal of the past. Emily followed through with her decision and filed for divorce from David. The court proceedings were tough, but she was determined to protect her son. With undeniable evidence of David's infidelity and neglect, Emily won full custody of Liam. David's world was falling apart, but it was a consequence of his own actions. Meanwhile, Claire's life took a sudden turn. She caught David cheating on her with yet another woman. Heartbroken and humiliated, she ended things with him for good. Realizing the depth of her mistakes, Claire reached out to me, hoping to mend our broken friendship. Samantha, I know I've hurt you deeply. I was selfish and blind, and I am so sorry. Can we try to rebuild our friendship? Her plea was sincere, but the wound was still fresh. I needed time to heal and to decide if I could trust her again. Claire, I appreciate your apology, but this isn't something I can just get over. It's going to take time for me to figure out if I can forgive you. She nodded, tears in her eyes, understanding that our friendship was now hanging by a thread. My business continued to thrive, gaining recognition in the local community. One day, I received an invitation to appear on a popular local podcast. They wanted to feature my story, a tale of resilience, betrayal, and success. I nervously agreed, hoping my journey could inspire others. The podcast interview was a hit. I shared my experiences, from the suffocating cubicle job to the betrayal by those closest to me, and how I found strength in building my business. Sometimes life throws challenges at you that seem impossible to overcome, I said, but those challenges can also push you to discover your true potential. During this time, my father fell seriously ill, and he was hospitalized again. Despite everything, Helen and I decided to be there for him in his last days. We spent countless hours at his bedside, sharing stories and mending our broken relationships. It was a time of forgiveness and healing. When he finally passed, we both felt a sense of peace, having forgiven him and each other. This difficult period brought Helen and me closer, and I decided to hire her in my business. Together, we created a stronger bond and a thriving company. As I sat on the same cliff where my journey began, the leather-bound journal in my hands was now full of my adventures and achievements. I flipped through the pages, smiling at the memories, the highs and lows, the heartbreaks, and the triumphs. I had come a long way from the woman who stood here months ago, paralyzed by fear and doubt. Looking out over the valley, I took a deep breath of the crisp, fresh air. This time, I felt no hesitation, no fear. I had faced the vast unknown and emerged stronger. I had learned that life's unpredictability could lead to beautiful, unexpected places if you had the courage to embrace it. I closed the journal with a sense of fulfillment and peace. My journey was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. With a heart full of gratitude and a spirit emboldened by experience, I walked away from the cliff, confident that the best chapters of my life were still unwritten. Did you enjoy this story? Comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.